morning, gentlemen. Wonderful weather. I'm just back from an extremely cold and shivering climate, but with good fun. I'm talking of Finland. And now I'm back home here. You have the horses running, and I'm going to talk to you on an item of news which has gripped Europe more than India or Southeast Asia, where I'm at the moment. Europe is gripped with the Ukraine war, and many Ukrainians, including the Finns and other people, are wondering what's going to happen. Is our civilization going to be destroyed? Is it the end, the Armageddon, the last war? I'm afraid the portents are very ominous, very, very ominous, and that is the point which we must bear in mind. Russia had launched an invasion of Ukraine. It was expected to be over in 3 to 4 days or maximum 3 weeks. 10 months down, Russians have just got about 15 to 18% of Ukrainian territory, and they are now raining missiles, they are raining so many things, but the result is not there. Ukraine is holding out. Why? Because they are backed by the NATO and the United States. There is all the propensity for escalation now, because even France has decided to give armored carriers and tanks to Ukraine. Americans have given the latest missile systems to Ukraine. They are not going to help Ukraine win. There is no two ways, no two opinion about it. But they will prolong the conflict and inflict irreparable damage to Russia. That is the game. The Russians, on the other hand, are trying their level best, but their morale is down. As I've already pointed out, the man who's to hold the ground, the infantry soldier, is not available in Russia. Russia doesn't have unlimited manpower, and that is what is the bugbear for the Russians. There is enforced conscription, but these men who are just inducted in for a short term neither have the motivation nor the will to fight, because they can't understand why they are fighting in Ukraine. Even the Russian people, who are feeling all the time that their army is invincible and Russia is one of the great powers of the world, are wondering what's happening. And they're wondering where Putin is leading them. There is disillusionment that Russia could not beat Ukraine in 10 months. So what is the efficacy of the Russian army? Generals are being changed. 4 generals have been changed in Ukraine by Putin. But I'm afraid the entire responsibility for this conflict rests on Putin. I would like to draw attention to the statement of the French President Macron. He had said that in case Russia is defeated, it will be very bad, because it will open the Pandora's box and Russia could react in any unpredictable manner. I also have the same opinion, because if Russia cannot win in Ukraine, and the Americans will not let them win, and all that Russia can do is to look for self-destruction, it's going to be very bad for the world. So the Russian people may be getting wary of Putin. Many are wondering that it will be better if Putin is sent home. But who's going to do it? Who's going to bell the cat? Putin has tremendous support in the Russian secret police, the internal security, and the army, at least the top general staff. It's only if the lower rank of officers revolt can Putin be overthrown. That's the only way he will go. He will not go otherwise. And it's going to be very difficult to dislodge him also, because all his opponents are put in the calaboose, jail. Just relax there. So if that is the approach, what is the West going to do? I think Joe Biden is playing with fire. Fire in the sense, he should have realized that he is antagonizing a very terrible enemy. Terrible in the sense, it has got the most nuclear weapons in the world, advanced technology of nuclear weapons, and Putin has made it plain that he has no hesitation in using those weapons. Now, what happens when the man is thinking? What does he do? He catches whatever straw is available to hang on. And that is what Putin will do. I think Putin is coming to the end of his tether. There are only two options available. Either Putin is removed, that's number one, and number two, there's an adjustment with Putin. That means the Americans will have to sacrifice Ukraine. Now, this is a Hobson's choice, a very difficult question and answer, because the Americans have got themselves so much entwined with Ukraine, they can't leave Ukraine. They let Zelensky up the garden path, and now you can't leave him. You can't say, okay friend, now you're going, you handle things yourself. It's not going to happen that way. So what is going to happen? That is a very crucial question. The war is on. 10 months. Americans stooge. Zelensky has not been able to win the war. Putin has also not been able to win the war, but in the balance, he has more territory under his control than Zelensky. That is the point. And Zelensky is fighting only so long as the Americans are giving him the weapons. If they hadn't given him the weapons, there would have been a regime to him now, and Europe would have been peaceful. I'm afraid the Americans have miscalculated badly. Many of my American friends may not agree with me. But if you must remember that those whom the gods destroy, they first make them mad. That's an old Norse myth. And Odin was the man, the king of gods, who enunciated it. Now, the Americans, in my view, are becoming mad. That's the only conclusion. I have not understood what are the stakes in Ukraine that the Americans should be so concerned about a small country, and why were they antagonizing the Russians so much by trying to incorporate Ukraine into NATO. NATO hasn't fought a damn war for the last 45 years. And I can say even now, in a conventional war, all the NATO armies, Poland, Bulgaria, Hungary, Denmark, all of them, they haven't fought a war, and do you think they are fit for fighting any war? They will just cave in. That is what is the biggest danger NATO faces. Do not have a fallacious opinion about your power, your military power, because as I've said, if war was to be won only by rockets and missiles, a conventional war, the Russians would have won, but they haven't been able to do it. And this is the same thing with NATO. Americans also should not forget that despite the massive firepower that they brought into play, at least in two wars, that is in Vietnam and Afghanistan, the net result has been an ignominious American retreat. Now, where do we go from here? It shows that the Americans have lost a sense of reason. They have forgotten sight of the main challenger to them, that is China. Or maybe they want to have an accommodation with China, but China does not want to have an accommodation with the Americans. That is the point. China wants this pound of flesh, the number one power in the world. And America had a big hand in bringing China to this position, to this apex. Just as the Americans always supported Pakistan, come what may, they helped the military dictators there while they talked of democracy at home and other places. Similarly, they have been soft on China. But they are terribly against the Russians. Why? This is a mystery to me, because the Russians are also the white race. But America cannot brook any other power to dominate even a portion of Europe. They want complete hegemony over Europe. And the Europeans have become so soft, so lax, and they have an aging population, a negative growth, population growth, that they need somebody to defend them, and they think the Americans are going to do it, so let's be with the Americans. This is a very dangerous idea. Nobody fought a war or won a war by relying on another power. The Americans are not going to bankroll Europe later on at their own expense. I don't know whether this reasoning is there with the Germans, the Poles who are talking such a lot, And the seeds, in my opinion, are growing. This is how World War I started. You can go through it, history. This is how World War II started. And now I may look out of place when I tell you that the seeds of the World War III have been sown, and it has been sown by the Americans, not realizing that it's going to be their own destruction. The Central Powers started the First World War. Nazi Germany started the Second World War and they were destroyed. And the Americans are now doing the same thing. Can any American tell me what was the reason to expand NATO eastwards? And what was the reason that Zelensky should be egged on to become the frontline state against Russia? What have the Americans gained out of it? They have given billions of dollars worth of weapons to Ukraine. How has it helped Ukraine? I think Zelensky would like to answer. He has destroyed the Ukrainian economy, the Ukrainian infrastructure, 8 million refugees in Europe. Is he very happy with it? He's lost 20% of the territory to the Russians. Why couldn't he have an accommodation with the Russians? Say, I won't join NATO, I'll be neutral. Why? Why not? There's an old saying, well, every nation need to have its own way. It's not like that. Global politics does not mean that. Global politics means accommodation. And Zelensky was not ready for any accommodation, neither the Americans. I have been to America and I have been impressed with the American people, the way they work, the way they made America a great power. But if you remember, the Hindu god Kuber's coffers also became empty. He was the god of wealth and he became a very poor person when his coffers emptied. If America thinks it can continue this way, give away trillions of dollars of gratis to other countries at the cost of the American taxpayer, and they are going to be honky-dory, everything fine, it's not going to happen like that. It doesn't happen like that. America is going to get burnt also. And America cannot be isolated. In the first two world wars, America was hundreds and thousands of miles away from the epicenters of the conflict. But now in the nuclear age, America is within range. I understand the Russians have targeted 50 American cities with missiles. And America is a much more populous place than Russia, much more developed, and the chances of destruction there are much more. Putin doesn't have support in Russia at the moment, yes. But as I told you, a drowning man catches a straw. And Putin, in his megalomaniac streak, may decide to have a nuclear exchange. What are the Americans going to do if Ukraine is bombed with a nuclear bomb in one of the cities? What are they going to do? Have a barrage of nuclear missiles on Russia? Russia retaliates, America gets destroyed. What does Biden mean? What does he plan to do? We have General Austin, the Secretary of Defense, Blinken, the Secretary of State, going around talking all arrant nonsense, and the American people are not opposing them. They don't realize that they are heading for destruction. I remember Einstein was once asked a question. He's supposed to be the father of the atomic theory, that E is equal to mc squared is his invention. What will happen if there's a third world war? He says there will be the fourth war, and that will be fought with stones. So it means effectively the destruction of Western civilization. Now this is the clockwork of history. There was a time when the Mughal Empire, the Ottoman Empire and the Chinese Han Dynasty was ruling. They were the powers, they went away, the British Empire came in, the French to a certain degree, and now the American hegemony is there. The Soviet Union came for a short time but collapsed, leaving America as the unipole, the single power in the world. And it was incumbent on America to see that it retains that power by a judicious use of military force and economic aid and an open mind. They didn't do that because they lost a sense of reasoning. Gentlemen, the situation in Europe, I think, is not happy. I have been seen firsthand there. There is an element of fear among the people, and I'm afraid nothing much is going to be done for them. And Putin is a desperate man. I'm not his supporter because it is the system which has brought him up, and the system is the only one which can take him down. America perhaps has reached the zenith, and there's an old saying that when you reach the top, you start slipping, and this is what is happening to America. Complete lack of reason. I fail to understand how a man who's leading the most powerful country in the world can be so short-sighted. Gentlemen, I do hope Third World War doesn't come about, but I'm afraid as it stands, there's a real chance unless statesmanship takes the front stage. Gentlemen, if you like my video, please subscribe to it, share it with your friends. I close now and wish you all the best. Jai Hind, glory to India, take care and God bless.